Welcome to Read Your Comics. Today I'm looking at Hulk number 333. I'm continuing looking at the Peter David run of The Incredible Hulk. I'm still in the first couple of issues. This is part of the McFarlane era, but McFarlane did not do this cover, even though it has a lot of McFarlaneisms about it. I don't know why they weren't letting McFarlane do the covers of the first handful of these. He may have still been doing double duty at DC and just maybe didn't have time. I don't know. It was still relatively early in his Marvel work, so maybe they just didn't trust him to do the covers yet. I have no idea. But I think this cover has a lot of McFarlaneisms about it. It's Steve Geiger and Bob McLeod, but this shadowy Hulk with the teeth and eyes coming through, that screams McFarlane to me in a lot of ways. The people and stuff don't really look as much McFarlane-y, and the wreckage maybe a little like it. Something about this makes me think McFarlane had some involvement in it, but he's not credited as it, so it's an awesome cover either way. But we do get McFarlane art on the inside. We're gonna have some establishing here of some domestic abuse going on in this town. It's about all we can really say about the scene. It's worth reading, but he's just basically dressing down this woman. He's obviously been beating her. She gets his gun, points it at her, and he laughs it off basically. He's like, I don't keep it loaded in the house anyway, and then he smacks her for it. So we're going to that's the premise of this issue, right? Or it's going to be a big part of it. Then we're going to cut back to the Hulk and Rick. And I'm starting to see more McFarlaneisms of the brow. In the last issue, I said I didn't feel like it was quite the Hulk, the McFarlane Hulk that most people probably associate from some of those later covers, if that's all they've seen. But we're starting to see it a little bit here. The inker on this one is Pablo Marcos. The last issue, I felt like the inking had a really heavy line that doesn't work as well with McFarlane. This is a little closer to probably how McFarlane would ink himself. And I've just really learned that McFarlane wasn't really into inking at this stage. It wasn't until he was doing his Spider-Man work that he started kind of doing more inking on his own and inking some other people's work on occasion too. So it's hard to say what exactly the inker was getting from these pencils. Anyway, the Hulk is, in the last issue, the leader had returned. He had siphoned off the gamma from Rick, who had been a Hulk, and took it back in himself and became the popcorn head leader. The explosion from the machinery is causing the cave to collapse. And initially the Hulk was like, you're on your own, kid. And it seemed like, we've got that mean gray Hulk, kind of like how he was in the first issue. He really dismissed Rick in the very first issue of the Hulk. So here's some dialogue. Pretty much the Hulk is raging because they're kind of trapped in what's left of the cave. The equipment's been destroyed. Rick is like, we need to get back to Gamma Base. And he's like, they'll try to prevent me from becoming the Hulk again. And I don't want to become Banner again. I don't ever want Banner to come back. That was the whole point of what the leader was supposed to do for me. And, he's kind of being a butt. And Rick is like, look, I know there's some Banner in there because you shielded me from the wreckage of the cave coming down. And he was like, oh, you were just in the right place at the right time. And now I'm out of here. See you later. And this is something that happens here that's hinted at that's not going to really pay any dividends until way later in the run. So, but I'll explain what's hinted at. In McFarlane's first issue, which Peter David did not write, General Ross dies. And then Peter David comes on the next issue. The leader, who looked like a normal person and was in sanitation, hops a ride on this ambulance with this guy as the driver, and he kills this guy. In this ambulance, though, was the body of General Ross. So in this scene, Rick sees the driver, who's been murdered, there, and he sees an empty gurney on the table. And he's like, why isn't this body on the gurney? He's like, well, I'll just get back to Gamma Base and let them figure it out. What they're touching on here is that the body of General Ross is missing. And, you can assume that the leader ran off with it. And we won't see that touched on again for many, 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 many issues. But I think it's interesting that Peter David kind of set something up, or he planted something. I don't know if he knew what he wanted to do in that moment, but he knew he wanted the leader to have General Ross's body. So the Hulk then is contemplating, like, he can't go back. He's got to put distance between Gamma Base and Banner. When the sun comes up, he's going to turn into Banner. So he lands in this town. He's like contemplating all the ways to do it. He's like, I can do something like maybe be mid-jump when he turns, so that when he lands, Banner's like too busted up to move or do anything, and he can just lay there until nighttime comes around again and he turns back into the Hulk. He's like, but that's assuming Banner survives that. And he's thinking of these different ways when all of a sudden he sees this liquor store, and he decides, you know what I'll do? I'll just start pounding liquor until the sun comes up. So, which is what he does. And I love this scene of where he just like knocks the tops off and chugs it. And then the sun starts to come up, and he's like, oh, I'm feeling it hitting me now. I must be changing back into Banner. So that when he wakes up, or that when he changes back, he's Banner, and he's like too drunk to even talk. And here's our sheriff that we saw at the beginning. The domestic abuse guy is the sheriff. And they arrest him, obviously. And they're amazed that a guy so little could drink so much. Rick shows back up to Gamma Base. He's talking to Betty about telling Betty what happened with the Hulk. And she is furious that Bruce has turned back into the Hulk, that he's done it to himself. And he's like, but Betty, he did it to like help me. And this is odd how they're like holding him back from her as she marches off. But she's furious. And this is where I guess the little subplot of her estranged husband that we've never known about kind of comes in. And he left her a note to like meet her. And where she's so distraught, she, is contemplating it now. Before, in the previous issue, she was like, get lost. I don't want anything to do with you. And now she's kind of like, I don't like the hair that McFarlane puts on Betty. I'm not a huge Betty fan, honestly. Then we get backstory for the domestic abuse stuff going on with the woman. This is McFarlane. This is McFarlane. It's like kind of bleeding off into the side, or the side view here, with the narration or the exposition dump to the side. These 2 pages look very McFarlane-y to me. Turns out the guy was like, he was the bully beater initially, and then it just got to his head when he became sheriff, and there's even an accusation in here that somebody tried to run against him as sheriff at one point, and that person disappeared, and we never saw him again. This is a McFarlane panel here, too. I love the hand there and the floating head. Banner finally kind of coming to a little bit in jail. And he's remembering something that the leader told the Hulk. And he explains here the whole, like, the gray Hulk with sunlight. And he even mentions that the sunlight has always affected the Hulk, even like the green Savage Hulk. That when he was the Hulk, even in the daytime when he was green, if the sun was out, it made him more docile. And, I mean, there's plenty of Savage Hulk stories that would say otherwise, but it made him where he just wanted to be left alone. Whereas the gray Hulk is, smarter and more cunning and a little bit meaner. Just like a mean person, not just savage mean, but like mean. And even like the moon itself, because the moon is just reflected sunlight, that even like depending on the moon phase, that can affect how strong the gray Hulk is. So that was pretty interesting. And he explains like it's that way because where he was affected by the gamma bomb outdoors, whereas most everyone else that's been introduced with gamma, it's always happened indoors. It's kind of some weird, Marvel pseudoscience, but whatever, it works. I love how the leader's face right there is in the eclipse, more or less. Pretty interesting. So just kind of giving some, an interesting take on how the Hulk works that, Peter David's going forward with for now. Banner can feel that, it's getting that time of day where he's going to change again, and he tries to convince them, like, hey, you guys need to get out of here for your own good. And he uses his bent crowbar or pipe that they showed in the little flashback earlier to smash his Banner's hand. That doesn't go over well because the sun just went down, and here comes the Hulk. And then we get the human emotional story going on here. We don't sympathize with this guy, right? I mean, we've seen what he's doing to his wife. We've seen that he's an asshole. So you kind of want the Hulk to beat this guy down, right? So he comes out into the street, throws the sheriff out into the street, and is terrorizing him. I mean, he's pretty much just smacking the guy away. And he comes out with this, this is my town. And the Hulk laughs at him because all the people are cheering the Hulk on to beat him down because they hate him. He's become, like, not only is he abusing his wife at home, he's abusing the town as the sheriff. And he even says in here something like, nobody has power over me, not the mayor, not the, like, whoever, blah, 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 the city commission. He's like, I run this town. It's my town. And here's his wife. She drops her suitcase because she was about to leave him. She must have been in a hurry because there's a little piece of clothing coming through there. I guess that's what that's supposed to imply. The Hulk takes his bent pipe and just crushes it. And he tries to, like, put up a little fight. And, of course, the Hulk's just like, this isn't even a fight. That's a nice McFarlane panel there, too. Again, he's doing it again, just at a smaller scale. So the wife is watching her husband get beat up. She's remembering how he beats up other people, and she's starting to feel some empathy towards her husband, and so she steps in. I don't know if his gun, where did she get the gun? It may have been on the ground. I think it's just on the ground right there. She picks up the gun and points it at the Hulk. So that's very McFarlane. See, I wonder, maybe this panel was done, and they looked at this panel, and then they did the cover. Maybe that's why the cover feels so McFarlane, because he did this. And then the Hulk presents a, conundrum for her. He's like, I can see it in your eyes. You want what they want deep down. He makes you miserable. Let me finish him for you. It's what you really want. Go to blazes. Love the old 80s comic book cursing. And then she just throws him the gun. He's like, tough lady. He's all yours. And she goes with him. And he's an ass to her there, too. He's like, get away from me. I don't need your help. I don't need you simping over me in front of the whole town. He says simpering, not simping. Simpering over me in front of the whole town. So he's like yelling at her again. I didn't point it out either, but this is very McFarlane. He's like huge eyebrows and a huge mustache. That's a McFarlane calling card too. I feel like he does that with a lot of character designs. This big, huge, bushy eyebrows. Anyway, he grabs the gun and puts it to his head, like basically saying you don't have it in you. Or no, he said, now give me the gun, and he grabs it. But it looks like he puts it to his head. Right there. Blam! Oh, that's not his head. Okay. This blonde hair right here was confusing me with the coloring. And I wonder, and this looks like skin color. I think this is just supposed to be gunfire. Firing off. He grabbed the gun and was firing off. But the colorist misinterpreted it as him putting it to his head too. Maybe they didn't have the words. Because otherwise that would have been a big at the back of the head. Anyway. So she shoots him. She's like, I didn't mean to do that. Ha, sure you didn't. Ah, don't cry, Banner. You should feel good after all. You thought you were alone. But you see, there's monsters everywhere. So that's our human story. Betty meets up with, what's his name, Roscoe or something. And they go off. And that might be the last we see of Betty for a while. So that's Hulk number 333 of the Peter David McFarlane era. I think we're really starting to see what Peter David's trying to do with the Hulk. He's establishing more like Hulk lore in the sense of like how his transformations work, how his powers work, why he's gray in this moment, and why it's different from other Gamma created characters. And that's kind of the hallmark, I think, of what makes the Peter David run so special, is because he does put that extra effort into like making the Hulk function more than just being like, an emotional temper tantrum monster. Not that that's not fun, but we're in the late 80s now, and this stuff has to have more substance. I wanted to say one more thing that I meant to say about the whole General Ross's body aspect. That's a Claremontian thing to do, to introduce something like that, because like I said, he doesn't bring that back until, I want to say it doesn't happen until like issue 400 almost, but maybe a little sooner, but it's still it's still a good 50 issues away at least from this point. So that's all I got for it today. I'll be back soon with another installment of the Peter David run of the Incredible Hulk. Until next time, read your comics.